Finding something decent, good, and right to say about the year 2020. That's next on this episode of the Gratitude Journal podcast.
This is the Gratitude Journal podcast.
Welcome back to the Gratitude Journal podcast, my friends, on a chilly, cold day here in Northeast Ohio, the frigid, frozen tundra. And I'm sure every place, every state, probably in the north or the upper Midwest, probably calls themselves the frozen tundra. But it actually resembles a frozen tundra today, covered with about 4 inches of snow. Matthew is my name, and thanks again for checking into the podcast, downloading it on your device, or listening on the Podbean site, whatever channel, whatever platform, whatever method you use to listen to your favorite podcast. Hopefully you will subscribe. It's very easy to do that. Then you'll get instant notifications about new audio content. And as always, I appreciate and am grateful that you would take the time to check out some of my mental meanderings about how maybe we can find new and different ways to be grateful for the things that we have. And, you know, I have to say, I was in a Zoom conference yesterday, and it's a monthly Zoom conference that I usually am involved with because I'm a part of this advisory board. And we were sort of going around the room and the rooms, as it were, and talking about, you know, the one thing that we have been grateful for that it helped us, you know, getting us through the holiday season in the midst of a pandemic. And really, I was really scraping my brain, struggling to jot down something that I could share with the group as several of the other people were already responding. And really, the one thing at that moment that really sprung to mind was the Cleveland Browns. I mean, let's face it. For those of you who are into sports, you're certainly aware of how depressing it is to be a Browns fan. And this year has been really, for some, the lone bright spot. And so when it came to me, I said, well, listen, I mean, I'm certainly, grateful that as far as I know, I don't have COVID-19, but I have to say the one thing that really has been the beacon of light for my wife and I is Browns football. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I have a wife who enjoys sports. And, she's really a big baseball fan more than any sport, but, she enjoys all the sports. And it's just been so strange because for whatever reason, I don't really know the answer to this. She enjoys going to sports bars to watch the Browns. I mean, she really doesn't drink and, but she enjoys like turning around and high-fiving people and talking to people that she doesn't know. And, everybody has this sort of common cause because they're draped in Browns gear. She likes that. I really kind of prefer to be in front of the television at home or, maybe at a family member's house. But I go and I enjoy it. I dig it. That's fine. That's cool. But obviously, we have not been able to do that this year. So as I was telling the group, we have this thing where, we get a root beer. And I mean, I've had a beer occasionally, but I'm not really much of a big day drinker. So, we'll get a root beer or share a root beer. It's a little too much for me sometimes. And I have this thing now where, after the first quarter or so, I put the tater tots in. I'm a tater tot fanatic and I have to have my tater tots. And so, we have the tots and we drink root beer and, I pace back and forth as is my custom for most games, especially ones that are tense and exciting. And so, we high five and Izzy the dog just kind of stares at us and looks at us. But that has been really a bright spot this year. Plus, we're approaching 10 wins as long as we can beat the Giants Sunday night. This is just incredible to me. And so it It is a really bright spot. And so I'm grateful for that. I am. And I would have to say that a lot of Browns fans are grateful as well. But, it has been tough to find the little slivers of illumination during this time. My sister just sent us a group text the other day saying her son Alex, one of the twins, he has COVID-19. So, we have a couple of family members now that have been touched by, the COVID-19 virus. So this is one of those years. It just seems like it's never going to end. It's only the 18th day of December. So who knows what could happen in the last 2 weeks of this year? Hopefully nothing worse than what has happened, but how can it get much worse? This is just crazy. And we are really all struggling to figure out the rationale behind this year called 2020. So when I look at this year, I really think about this podcast and what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to mean. And I got a notification the other day that the Gratitude Journal podcast has hit 5,000 downloads. So I don't know what that means because I really don't have a barometer for measuring it. Now I know, the 25, 30 top, podcasts in the world. I mean, they're making money and they have, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads. And so, for all of the rest of us, the little person, I guess we delight in that. That's a celebratory event for us. But I'm not sure what it's supposed to mean. But as I got this notification from Podbean, like, congratulations, you have 5,000 downloads. And I'm like, okay, so is that good? Is that bad? What is that supposed to mean? And really, it means nothing. Really, it means absolutely nothing. And I'm okay with that, but it does make me question the rationale behind this podcast. And I've kind of notated that this is going to be the last podcast of the year because, next week is Christmas. I don't know. Who knows? I may get a burr up my behind and just decide I need to be in front of a microphone. But I'm going to sort of take a break and kind of let things settle in as they were. And I thought, everybody does these kind of year in review things, which I hate because you're reading stuff in the newspaper that I've been following all year, and I really don't need a review of it because I've pretty much followed it. It's like reading a game recap of the Browns game. I just saw the game, so there's really no need for me to read Mary Kay Cabot's article because I've already seen the game. So, I don't need the recap. The recap is not really my thing, but not that I'm going to recap, but I do think that a couple of things stand out this year, being that the Gratitude Journal podcast emerged around the time of pre-COVID. So, this has been a significant year in a variety of different ways. And I have to say that, I have to give credit to my friend Ron in Kentucky, really, because, it was his suggestion of keeping a journal and a gratitude journal. One, I will admit, one that I need to get back to doing more regular writing in because I've kind of saved a lot of these things that I'm grateful for the podcast and just regular chit chat, with other people. And I need to get back into being better with that. But I give the sort of embryonic, congratulatory hand clap to my friend Ron, who really was the one who sort of said, you might want to consider that. It's sort of a good idea, amidst all of the trials and tribulations of life to find these small little things. And so I give him credit. And so somewhere in these 5,000 downloads, I, along with, people who subscribe to the podcast and hopefully in their own worlds are trying to find their own little slivers of gratitude. It has been pretty damn tough this year. And there, at some points throughout the year, I have really struggled, with finding where these things are, because this year has just been filled with so much death and destruction and bad things and an overall, pull across the land. And it just seems like we've had this piled on top of us over and over and over. I remember my friend Brad was going through a lot of stuff, and at one point he said to me, "How much more am I supposed to take before I just go off the deep end?" And I'm sure there are people who feel like that, especially people whose lives have been turned upside down relative to job or living conditions, and then maybe even to get the virus. So this has been just one of those years that just seems so surreal on so many different levels. But I feel, not to turn it into a year in review, but I do feel that a couple of things stand out above other things. And, naturally, the event closest to us is the death of our granddaughter. And so without, rehashing a lot of things that I think I've already shared about my, thoughts and feelings, relative to Mally's life and, its effect on her and her family, I think the one thing that I can definitely say that I'm grateful for is just being able to witness the courage of her journey. And I think, whenever we see somebody going through and trying to overcome an event, I think it's a natural inclination for us to try to derive something from that for ourselves. I mean, in a sense, I guess maybe that's a selfish part of us, but I don't think it's a bad selfish. I think there are lessons and things that we try to take away from that, or maybe not completely, an active participation, but maybe it begins to settle in a little while later, and all of a sudden, boom, it sort of emerges. But, just seeing, pictures, watching, videos over the course of, the last 5 years of her life, sporadically being able to, visit with her and spend some time. It was never enough time. And being a witness to a girl in her mid-teens nobody in their mid-teens should have to confront that. Once the reality set in and the confrontation was inevitable, obviously it's the hope of everyone involved, through goodwill and prayer and, positivity, that the person who is the subject of this, overcomes it. And obviously the downside to this year is that, Mally lost her struggle against cancer. But selfishly, what I derive from this is this will and a determination that is really like an archetype of how one is supposed to run one's life. And just, reading some of her posts, seeing some of the things that she would say on Instagram, and knowing that, she just, 2 days before she went through this, rigorous bout, with chemo, and just thinking to myself, could I do that? Like, how would I do this? Would I have the courage and the strength, to do this? And I would lay awake in bed at night thinking, I don't know. I really don't know. And here she is laying in her bed at the same time, dealing with this, struggling with it, making amends, trying to do everything that others are telling her to do to try to get better and defeat it. And like she's in the middle of the gunk, and I'm sort of dancing in the peripheral, doing nothing for her, not being anything other than trying to send, positive thoughts. And just that level of courage is just breathtaking to me. And I hope that in our journey here, that I can try to pilfer, some of that strength and courage and what it must be like to face head on something like that. If there's any gratitude at all, the gratitude comes from hopefully being able to follow her example in whatever struggles face us down the road. And I know it sounds funny to say that, but for that example, I'm just really grateful. Dovetailing Mally's death with, the struggle that we're going through makes me even more acutely aware of my fragility and all the lessons that I need to learn to be a better caregiver and to be a more structured caregiver and to be someone who is just not going to throw in the towel in frustration and anger, because it's very, very easy to do. And I need to scoop up this courage that, Mally demonstrated in her life and in her death, and apply some of this courage, in our own struggle here. It's so easy to just let the anger and the emotion and the frustration absorb you. I think that it takes more strength and courage to stand back and regroup. And if anything, Mally's journey has taught me to regroup even more in our journey. And I've not been a very effective caregiver this year. I could be far more effective. And I think sometimes I'm not looking around me enough to see people who are setting the example, who are dealing with the struggle every day, and to learn from their example how to manage your own struggle and to be grateful for that. And I think a bright spot for me this year is meeting a couple of people who have been brought into my world. And I think in addition to just being friends, their example, the way they roll, the way they operate has been an example that I need to use more of going down the road. So I'm grateful for that. And one of those persons is my friend Mark Lee Shannon, who I consider a friend, and we're getting to know each other. We don't know each other all that well, but there's a feeling that I have, this feeling when you feel like you've known someone for a long time. And while I am not in alcohol dependency recovery, Mark is. And I think listening to his podcast, being involved in his podcast, getting a sense as to what his struggle is like every day, and the person who is in long-term recovery, their struggle every day, this courage that he demonstrates in finding ways to eke out victories moment by moment, every minute, every hour, every day. This is a lantern, that shines. And I feel like I should tell him in this podcast how grateful I am that our paths have crossed, and how grateful I am to witness his ongoing struggle. And I, again, selfishly try to take something from that struggle and apply it to my own world. It's important in that struggle to be equipped to be organized and be dutiful and be specific, and to make sure that you have your ducks in a row, and you and other people are looking for you to be a mentor, and you have to sort of be on top of your game. And, I take all of these things and I look at our situation and I say, I want to try and do the same thing. And I know that maybe Donna doesn't know what my end game is, but the end game is to be as much a guiding light to others as Mark Lee Shannon is to the people who come to him and seek him out and look to him. If I'm to take anything away from this year, that would be another bright spot. And I regard his journey, really, and the people like him who I've met and come across in my dealings with 91.3 The Summit, and the people who have been affiliated with the Rock and Recovery movement. And I regard, their journey as being sacred. It's a sacred journey. And, when they allow me to write copy and to produce audio things, and hopefully later some video profiles, when they allow me to step into their world, that is a sacred entrance. And, that's an entrance that I don't take lightly. And so I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful that he would consider me a friend. And so for that reason, I really feel a good amount of gratitude for that. And if there's a third thing, then I think that really stands out about 2020, and I think I probably have referenced it before, is that, I have a long history with trying my best to find spirituality on some level. And this goes beyond wanting to be a Catholic priest. This goes beyond going to the seminary. I am a pretty piss-poor Catholic, and I admit it. And my reasons for that are probably better reserved for some other podcast. But I'll just say that having worked this year with Living Bread Radio, it reminds me how pathetic of a Catholic I am. And I'm making my peace with that. And that's okay. But the good part about that, the good part, is while I'm putting together audio pieces featuring people who are very devoted Catholics, it makes me and has made me realize how important having a sense of spirituality is in whatever way, shape, or form that takes. And again, this is something probably reserved for another podcast, but, I've often wondered about, trading in one religion for another religion. And, sometimes I think I'm not quite in that space where I'm really prepared to trade in, the rituals and the traditions of one for another. I mean, I'm not really, I don't want to trade a blue suit in for a gray suit. I don't know that I'm there. But what I am into is finding a variety of ways to better illuminate this need, and I call it a need, to express myself from a spiritual perspective. And I think having the opportunity to tell myself earlier in the year, one of my primary goals was to do more meditation, to do more sitting meditation. And I know I've made reference to Zazen this year, and I know virtually nothing about it. I mean, I have a cushion, and, I have a Zafu, and I sit on it, and I try to maintain good posture, and I try to text photos to, my friends and say, am I sitting right? Am I doing this correctly? And I mean, really, I know zero about this. But what I do know, I don't quite understand the whole essence of it, but what I do know is feeding this quest is essential. I don't know why it's essential. I don't know all the parameters of what drives me to think that it is a critical part of my life, but it is. This really, to me, has very little to do with religion. It has really very little to do with theology. It really has more to do with doing the thing that is most natural because there's no way around it. And that's just sitting and breathing. So, I mean, you can attach all kinds of labels to it, and there are many varieties of it. But to me, the Zen method of sitting and trying to explore that and to watch YouTube videos of those who can talk about it and who know a hell of a lot more than me, and reading about it and talking about it. I mean, but most importantly, doing it, that is where my head is at. Like, that's where I need to be, and it's what I need to explore. I don't know why, totally. And to a certain extent, I don't even care why. It's just I know that I need it. It's almost kind of like when when I smoke, that little pinch, that you sense when your body has run out of all the nicotine that you gave it, 45 minutes ago, and it's starting to crave it again. That's kind of what I feel a little bit. So each morning, most mornings, there are mornings when I don't want to do it, or I'm too busy, or my mind is going in 10,000 directions. But I would say that's the kind of twinge that I feel. And hopefully in 2021, perhaps in the scope of this podcast or wherever, hopefully I can maybe elaborate on that as I get more insight or feel other things, or maybe it comes in 2022 or 2023 if I'm still around, who knows. But I am grateful that whoever or whatever sort of got me, just like nudge me, like a little nudge. And I'm grateful for that. Like, that to me is a win. It's a bright spot. It's something that I will take away from, 2020. My friend Ryan, another, person who I met over the past couple of years who, has just been very helpful. And I'm just really in admiration of his drive. As a young, professional, he's very talented. And, he's been very, very generous with his knowledge, as I try to get more involved in the video and the photography world. And, Ryan he hit a home run this year. I mean, right in the middle of a pandemic, he had a situation he was dealing with, and it's sort of resolving itself. And then he moved into this great house, and then he got this great job. And it was just he's like this mega success story. I'm just so happy for him. And I think, though, a lot of us are, our little success stories are, not quite so evident. And, it doesn't make them less or more important or whatever. It's just they're a little less evident. And I think these things are the little molecules of goodness, if those can be good at all, the little molecules that I will sort of take away from this year. So there it is. I don't know what the proper thing to do is. I've never really known, to be honest. I mean, whenever I was told to do the right thing, or not that I'm a rebel or by any stretch, but I just, my mind kind of went into overdrive. I just overthought it and thought, what really is that? Is that really the right way to do things, or is that really the right way to think, or is this really the right length of podcast to have? Or, I mean, really, I know it's supposed to be 30 seconds, but what's 47? What's the big deal? It's like, okay, there's some good garlic flavor on this. Sprinkle a little more. Who cares? I mean, this beer only has so many hops in it. Put some more in it. You never know. It might turn out. And I think, the last thing I'll say is this. I think that I need my little comfort spaces as much as anybody needs their little comfort spaces. I want to do the same thing every day, 95% of the time. I want to do what I want to do. And I want to sit in my same chair. And I want to do this time and this time because I need to have that. I need to do that. I need to be organized. I need to make sure I'm doing things and managing business and making sure that I'm caring for Donna in the proper way. And, the days are long. The days are long, and they're filled with a lot of things, and it's important for me to be sort of structured and kind of know my place, kind of where I need to be and where she needs to be, and all those other good things, and stay safe. That's been the thing for 2020. But I think we have to occasionally step out. We have to step out of our zone. You have to walk a different way. You have to take a trip. You have to go to a place where you've always kind of thought about going to, even if it's 20 minutes away by car. It doesn't have to be Paris or Madagascar. It can be Atwater. I've never been to Atwater. Let's go check that out. Or ring up somebody who you haven't talked to in a while, or send a note and inquire about somebody who you inquired about 8 months ago and you kind of lost their way. I mean, I think sometimes I feel the need to, every once in a while, just step outside of it. Go somewhere you're not supposed to go. Do something sort of out of the ordinary so that it gives you some perspective on stuff. It gives you a perspective. It makes you appreciate and feel gratitude for the things that you do have. And I know when we take a trip, we've taken a lot of trips this year, ill-advised trips, from a safety standpoint, but necessary trips. And I know once I bring the bags in and I put the dirty clothes in the laundry, which I always have to do immediately when I come into the house. Donna's the complete opposite. She throws the suitcases down and boom, she grabs a root beer. Not me. I got to get all this stuff together. And as soon as I've had my shower and I sit down in my robe, I'm back in the saddle, back in my space. I don't want anybody messing with my space. This is my space. Get off my lawn. But every once in a while, you got to step out. You got to step out and get perspective, do something different just for a little bit so that you can really appreciate all those things you have. So hopefully the stepping out part in 2021 will be done, safely and and we can go about doing that again. And I miss that. I miss stepping out. I miss just, hey, you know what? We've never been to Bay Village. Let's go up there. And just every once in a while, you got to do something a little different. I miss that. I want to do that again. So anyway, if I don't get a burr up my butt and decide to spring out another podcast, sorry this went on so long. And I just hope that somewhere in the holiday season, you find some little glimmers of light and hope. We're doing a family Zoom thing on Christmas night. And other than that, we're not doing anything. We're dropping off a few gifts, but we're not delivering fudge, to 9,000 different locations like we did on Thanksgiving. We're pretty much going to sit in front of the TV, in front of Netflix, and I have a list of things to watch, and that's pretty much what we're going to do. And just try to stay safe, hopefully. And hopefully you will stay safe as well, and you will have as joyous a holiday as one can have in the middle of a pandemic. So I want to thank you for downloading and listening to this podcast. And man, I hope 2021, it's got to be better, right? It's got to be better. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be even better if the Cleveland Browns make the playoffs. So, oh man, it's just so excited. All right, I got the tater tots ready and I'm ready to roll. So anyway, here's to you. Thank you again for tuning in to another edition of the Gratitude Journal podcast.